for me? All right. Putting it lightly, I am not a fan of horror movies. Putting it more accurately, I am so afraid of horror movies that if I am at home alone at night and a new commercial comes on, I need to very quickly change the channel or mute the TV and close my ears and close my eyes, which is a really dangerous game because when you can't see and you can't hear, you don't know when you can look and you risk the spooky business. Yeah, it's not fun, guys, but I am afraid. So in my early 20s, I was working at a place called Frightland. And in case you don't know what Frightland is, it is a carnival that is married to a haunted attraction. And so it's got all the spooky business. It's got your hay rides, it's got your corn mazes, it's got your barns, it's got your haunted houses. And reminder, guys, they are all haunted. And so every single working day was my personal hell. And all of this terror was laid out in Ain't Nothing Around for Miles, Delaware. Yeah. And so on this particular day, I had been running late, and by the time I got there, it was already dark, and employees have to park down in this secluded area that you have to drive down this little gravel path to get to, and the secluded area is right next to the haunted corn maze. And so as I sat there in my car and I cut the engine, I could hear the screams, I could hear the laughter, I could hear feet running around me. And the only thing that stood between me and the children of the corn maze was this rickety wooden makeshift fence. It was not protecting me from anything. But Gunther, oh, by the way, Gunther is my car, and he is affectionately named that, and he will be referred to as that for the remainder of this story. Gunther was a protector. His ashy gray sofa-like seats kept me comforted. And I sat there and I prayed, please protect me on this 50-feet walk through the Midway. And so I get out of my car and I walk to the coffee stand, which always left me with a ton of panic because you guys, it was a minefield of horror paraphernalia. There were chainsaws sawing, yeah. There were witches cackling. There were just the sounds of all of my nightmares in one. And so I wound my way through the Midway, waiting for someone behind a corner that I knew was there that would get me because they were gonna have me as their next victim. And I made it to the coffee stand, as I always did, where Ashley, my coworker, was. She always laughed at me. Guys, she laughed at everything, and when the walking characters would creep up on her at work, she would let out a laugh that was so loud and so piercing that it would go through all of that fear-based fun that we heard. And then she would laugh at me and remind me that it was fake. And yes, guys, I know that it is fake, but I am still scared. And so the night ended, as it always did. I got through it, and we trudged through the mud to my car, and I let her know that on this day, since I was running late, I didn't have time to stop to get gas, but I knew Gunther, and I knew that Gunther had enough gas to get me to the nearest gas station before I went on that 45-minute drive home. And she goes, oh, okay, Block can give us directions. Block was their coworker, and so reluctantly, I took his shortcut. And we got in the car and we cranked up the heat and we made a left down the road until we saw the produce sign that we would make a right at, except we never saw that produce sign. And we drove on, and my high beams, they lit the road that had no street lights, and we continued forth, and for 10 minutes or so we drove, and nothing around us. And then Gunther, he spurred, and he puttered, and he came to a stop because he had run out of gas. And there we sat. The blackness was all around us. It was like being in the deepest part of the ocean without the rushing sounds of water around you. And for 15 minutes we sat there. No car drove by us, no light in the distance. We knew that we needed to take action, and so we got out of the car and we thrusted our cell phones wildly into the air looking for a signal, only to be met with the sounds of something crunching through the cornfields that flanked both sides of this 2-lane paved road. Someone or something was out there waiting to pounce. We thought of walking, but neither one of us knew which way was the right way since we took the shortcut, and so we sat there, and the night got darker, and the wind got louder, and it took its time cutting through my bones as I stood in the middle of this street looking for cell phone service that I never did find. And so we sat on this back road with no GPS, no map, not even a MapQuest direction sheet, guys. Nothing to lead us on our way. Ashley, who laughed about everything, was no longer laughing. So by this point, we've smoked all of our cigarettes and we've played the "it's your fault, no, we shouldn't have listened to him, if maybe we just we did all that, and nothing happened. And so as I sat there, despair and defeat washed over me as I looked in my rearview mirror into the dark black night. And then in the distance, a set of headlights coming up the street. No, barreling up the street towards us. And I said, "Oh my God, someone is coming!" And she jumps out of the car without hesitation, and she gets in the road, and she's kicking her feet, and she's jumping up and down and doing everything she can to flag down this driver. And she did. This black SUV with tinted windows stopped about 10 feet behind my car. I couldn't see it because his lights shined right into my rear view and my side mirror, blinding me. But my friend was in the middle of the road. So quickly as I could, I got out of that car and I joined her in the road, and I sat there and I watched this man, or this person, in the light that we couldn't see, but we could see his silhouette. He was a tall man with a slender build, kind of like Slender Man. So there was that. And as I stood there, worry was a ball that had planted itself in my throat. I was shocked to silence, and I waited. As he walked a little closer and he got into the headlights, I could see that it was odd for such a tall man to have such small feet. I know, right? But that wasn't the only thing about his small feet that caught my attention. It was the new, fresh, wet mud and the old, crusty, dirty mud that was on his boots. And Ashley told him about what had happened that night, and she said, "This is what happened, sir, and can you please help us?" And he stopped and he looked, and with a small smile, he looked at me, and he goes, "That's no good. But I can help you on your way." And so we, with no other choice, we got into his car, and I climbed into his back seat with a gas can, and Ashley got into his front seat. And as I sat there and I took a survey of all that was around me, I noticed the shovel and the tarp and the other tools in his car. And I, again, was shocked to silence. But Ashley was not, because she was the outgoing one, and she asked him any and everything she could to keep him talking. "What are you doing out this late? Do you take this road often? Who's this song by on the radio? How long have you had this car?" Anything to keep this man talking is what Ashley did, and I watched his every move. And so we drove on for what felt like an eternity, but was really only 10 minutes, and the sky lit up as if we had seen a mirage. But it wasn't a mirage. It was that coveted gas station that we had been looking for, that we just hadn't gotten far enough to find. And he hopped out, and he grabbed our gas can, and he filled it up, and he got back in the car, and he drove us back to Gunther, and he put the gas in the car, and he got us on our way. Now, what we learned that night from Ashley's questioning was that this man was a volunteer firefighter, and he was on his way to the firehouse to take a call. And he was such a gentleman, but the thing that made me most happy that evening was that Jason did not come out of that corn and get me. Thank you.